let's get more on the situation in Bakhmut, specifically with Yuriy, an advisor to the Ukrainian Minister of Defense. He joins me now from Kyiv. And could you shed some more light on why Russian forces have been so persistent in their advance on the city of Bakhmut?
Good evening. They have been persistent for the last 4.5 months because essentially this is when their attacks on Bakhmut began. The reason why their attacks are so fierce and in many ways, difficult to explain, because they have lost thousands of Russian soldiers trying to take control of Bakhmut. Now, the main reason, of course, is that in the second half of this year, the Russian army has not had any success on the battlefield. The last city that they took control of was Lysychansk. And since then, it was only backwards for them. So, of course, they're desperate to, show some form of success to their own people because, we will soon have, this large-scale invasion began almost a year ago. And they are really losing badly on the battlefield.
But it's interesting that there doesn't appear to be any strategic or operational advantage to being able to take control of the city, that it just appears to be a victory for its own sake. But does that mean that there is an attempt here to inflict losses on Ukrainian troops, to try and entrench them in that particular territory in order to weaken their effectiveness elsewhere?
It is possible to assume that original plan of the army of the aggressor was to encircle the Ukrainian forces in the area of Bakhmut. But of course, after the success of the Ukrainian counteroffensive in the Kharkiv region, which is north of Bakhmut, these attempts to encircle the city were doomed, and the Russian army fled from Kharkiv region. So it is indeed trying to get a success for the sake of success, but the city does not have any strategic importance. Moreover, what needs to be said is they are using now in Bakhmut the same tactics they've used before in cities like Mariupol, like Rubizhne. So they are raising it to the ground. It's a barrage of artillery fire day in, day out. They are throwing their soldiers, both regular army, the Wagner group, the so-called Wagner group, the newly mobilized, they're dying there in hundreds on a daily basis. So it is very difficult to comprehend what they're trying to achieve. But like I said before, they need badly some success, because otherwise they will meet 1 year of this war without anything to show to their own people.
I mean, I know that you're in Kyiv, but what information can you tell us about the frontline situation there? We know that the civilian population once stood at 72,000. It's dwindled to some 12,000 people. What are conditions like for them, and how are those remaining residents in Bakhmut managing to survive?
Well, the Ukrainian government actually started evacuating cities such as Bakhmut back in spring. So the vast majority of those who were willing to evacuate had the opportunity to do so, and they did. Some people don't want to leave under any circumstances. This is life, right? So they don't want to abandon their homes, and they would rather stay under their artillery fire than leave their houses and their motherland. So the Ukrainian army is now helping them as much as they can, in terms of providing them with the basic necessities, with food, with drinking water, with electricity. But of course, the situation is dire, and it's literally a humanitarian disaster.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. Yuriy, advisor to the Ukrainian Minister of Defense, joining us from Kyiv.